Greetings once again. It's a pleasure to be back. And today I'm going to talk about menstrual hygiene management with a focus on the critical role of the pharmacist and the next steps in terms of actually establishing and mainstreaming these critical roles that we can play in menstrual hygiene management. So the reason as to why I'm talking about this is because we know this coming week, as we're starting it today on tomorrow on Monday, we know 28th of May is World Menstrual Hygiene Day. And being World Menstrual Hygiene, we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing to address challenges that come with menstruation that our ladies are going through? And now, what are the challenges? How are we addressing them? What are the gaps that we are currently having? And how do we look at ourselves as professionals and as pharmacists in this particular space to actually address some of these challenges? And some of the key bits that what we need to know is there is a role we have to play. And that role, already some of us are playing in their small ways or in their big ways. But the main thing is, how do we mainstream it and make it overstanding? And how do we ensure that we're contributing to the common global aspirations to making menstruation a normal fact of life by 2030, which is the theme for the Menstrual Hygiene Day 28th of May this year. So some of the key challenges that we all acknowledge are existing in the menstrual health management space is about the stigma and discrimination. We come from our communities where we know the stigma and discrimination that's associated with menstruation, and the stigma generally comes with the feeling of being unclean, being untidy because of the menstrual period. And therefore, oftentimes when you find, for example, in the Kenyan context, some year, I think it's a year or two ago, we had an incident where a lady was shamed for having stained her clothes because of her menses, and that even led her to taking her life away by suicide. And such kind of experiences are not as good as good in our society. So the question is, how do we address such kind of challenges? We need to find a ways of addressing stigma, and it comes out in form of shame. In terms of personal actually unease, the self-esteem is low during that period because you feel like everybody would be judgmental in terms of any incident in case you get to soil your clothes. But this is a common physiological process in life. How do we overcome such stigma? Because it's not about me and you talking about it and just accepting it is a common phase of life, but it's about making every other person acknowledge that this is a normal biological process, and being a normal biological process, we need to be able to support people who might not be so conversant with this, especially during the initial phases of menstrual periods. Young ladies who it's the first time they're having it, let's say 12, 13, getting into the puberty phase, how do they make peace with it? And then once they know, how do they actually manage it? For example, the use of sanitary towels. Do we offer education support system? And those are the kind of things that we need to know. And beyond offering the support to the ladies in our communities, we know most of the shaming would be coming from actually not the ladies. It could be coming to the boys and the men in their communities. If it's the boys in the class where they are, and these boys are actually not exposed, they've never known about menstruation, or even if they knew, they don't know much about it. And we create a social mobilization, a social movement where the men are looking out for the ladies, especially the boys in the schools, and they're able to support them in case they're having challenges without expecting much from that, because that is also creating a loophole where we now see cases where for people with period poverty, when we're talking about it in our context, you find a lady having to engage in sexual activity with another man somewhere, regardless of the age and all that, with the aim of getting at least 50 shillings, half a dollar or so, because that is what they'll get to ensure they buy the sanitary towels that we'll be using over that period. So how do we overcome such kind of challenges? And that is stigma and discrimination that's coming up, and we need to find a way to address it. And some of these is actually leading to poor academic performance for some of these ladies, failure to turn up for work because of the stigma and shame. But as much happened, that also actually is reducing our aspect in terms of economic development as a nation, because when these people are not productive, they're not able to drive their families, they're not able to contribute the best way they can, and therefore we are losing up on that. And even the human dignity perspective, how do we ensure we actually safeguard such? So there's a lot that needs to be done when we talk about stigma and discrimination. Then we have the next phase, we're talking about access to menstrual hygiene products. Looking at the socioeconomic dynamics of our society, not everybody is able to afford the sanitary towels. And even now, when we're talking about access to the disposable sanitary towels, the question we need to ask ourselves, how feasible is their use? For example, when you're providing a disposable, like the reusable sanitary towels, in certain communities, you're expecting that it would be economically affordable because you buy it once and you can use a pair for almost a year. And if you're able to use it for a year, that would already save you the cost. But the question is, for you to keep using it, it needs to be washed. Do you have access to clean water that you can use in terms of washing this sanitary towel? If you don't have it, then it would be socially, actually, in terms of the conversational, it's a reliable way that can help you in terms of meeting the economic sense. But beyond the economic imperative in terms of the cost, it's not feasible because the strain is there. If you're looking about a primary school where the children will be staying in school through the day, they go home in the evening and they have to change it within the day, then where are they going to carry the soiled one during the day? Is it going to have some stench or so? How is that going to contribute in their relationship with others? Will they even be feeling more uncomfortable or not? And do they have access to sanitary actually conditions in terms of the washrooms and the latrines in the schools? So when you're talking about such, we need to see where are the gaps and how do we address these gaps? It's just beyond the sanitary towels. It's into the hygiene measures that are available, the sanitary conditions of the latrines and the washrooms that they have access to. So we have to look into all these, but main thing is ensuring that these products are available and they're able to be used without such challenges like access to water to even clean the reusable ones. Then the other bit that is less talked about is menstrual pains. If you had any lady in your life that you talk to about normal such challenges they experience in life, during the menstrual period, they will let you know that the pains at times are unbearable. And when the pains are unbearable, we need to be able to ask ourselves, as pharmacists, because we're the medicines experts, what products are available to help in management of pain, menstrual pain? And are we able to actually offer the counsel to the ladies in our lives and even those who come to our centers of practice to ensure that they get the best management for this pain? Because pain is the discomfort. And the optimal pain management is where you're giving people the ability to live their lives successfully and with ease without having this distress. And you understand that menstrual cramps come with a lot of pain for some of the ladies. And for those who have especially other complications, let's say, for example, polycystic ovarian syndrome, those who have endometriosis, the pain is even small. And therefore, they need additional pain management products. It's our role to actually assess and see how are we going to help them manage their pain. And that is a gap that needs to be addressed. And even beyond looking at available therapies, we need to be able to ask ourselves, are there other alternative medicines that can be used in management of pain? Are there alternative therapies that are already been in place? Can we optimize them and develop a new product that can help specifically for menstrual pains? Because if we don't, that is going to be a problem for us, and therefore we need to look at it strategically. Resourcing shortfalls. When we talk about the menstrual hygiene products, we're talking about people have not being able to afford, especially in the rural communities. So how do we ensure that resources are available? And the government started a program to provide sanitary towels to school-going girls. It started years well, but it hasn't been sustainable. And some schools have not received their supplies for over 2 years now since COVID started. So how do these ladies, especially now they're going back to school in a compressed term period, how are they going to be continuing with education? How do they access these products? So those are the challenges that we need to look at. And one other thing that we need to ask is how do we close the resourcing shortfalls and the gaps that are available in the ecosystem? And once we close them, we are able to sustain and ensure that we're making menstruation a normal fact of life because it is a normal process in physiological systems of our lives. Then ultimately, the other bit is in terms of the governance frameworks and policies. When the government came up with such kind of a program on ensuring ladies have menstrual hygiene products in schools, it was a good one. Is it anchored on policy? What is the role of the pharmacists? So what are the distribution frameworks that are put in place? What can we do as pharmacists in our areas of practice to actually support the government in delivering on this? And those are the kind of questions that we need to be asking ourselves to ensure there is a government framework on policy that is giving us the direction. And once we know that, we can contribute to optimize it. And at the same time, we can take advantage of it and actually support the government in delivering menstrual hygiene products. So what are the next steps in my case? If I look at these, I see as pharmacists, we have to be actively involved in community engagement, social mobilization, and advocacy programs that are creating awareness about our role in making menstruation a normal fact of life. Making people be aware, sensitization programs. And once they sensitize and they actually acknowledge their role to play, then we make them be our social allies in driving this in terms of social marketing perspective. And with that, we now hold leaders accountable in terms of advocacy, ensuring policies are robust and helping us deliver on that. Finally, the next step, service delivery, including supply chain optimization. When you're talking about the government putting structures to ensure the delivery of sanitary towels, are they able to sustain it? During COVID, there were shortfalls in distribution because schools were closed. Do we tell ourselves that these ladies are now not going to use sanitary towels? They still need them. So can we take advantage of the community pharmacy channels and optimize that because they're available in every region, in every community, so that ladies that are going to school can have actually a robust data information system where they can obtain them from the pharmacies at a free of charge, but that will be charged to the government through the distribution network. That would be an delivering option for us. In terms of pain management, I've talked about it in terms of developing new therapies, optimizing the available therapies in managing this pain. and actually asking ourselves, how do we manage the pain the best way possible? And I think that is an opportunity that's still lying there. And when you look at the global population, when you're talking about 52% ladies, that means out of the possible 7 billion, you have almost 4 billion people who will need your product at any one point in time. It even makes the economic sense. So the question we need to ask ourselves, are we able to develop a product that can help this population? And if you're able to, there's a business sense, but it's also contributing to our aspect in terms of making menstruation a normal fact of life where somebody doesn't have to leave work because of the pain. And the other thing when you talk about pain is in our workstations, when the ladies that we're working with tell us that they are having their menstrual cramps, the pain is too much unbearable and they need a break from work. Can we be listening enough? Are we compassionate to actually see the pain they're going through to give them the time off? We need to be keen enough to see how would we want to support them. And that is another area that we can support, actually acknowledging that they're human, the challenge they're going through, they need support, and the support is in terms of giving them the time to bear the pain without having the stresses of having to cope with the hectic work environment as well. In terms of resource mobilization, when the government is facing resource shortfalls, as organizations, as pharmacies, as individuals, let's ask ourselves, how can we mobilize resources? And one key example currently under the organization Ryculture Health and Social Innovation, we have the SRHR Youth Champions Network, where we work with youth leaders and youth-led organizations to improve access to sexual and reproductive health services and actually champion for sexual and reproductive health rights. And on that account, some of the activities that we do is these young people in their communities have identified problems. They're trying to address them. What can we do to them? We build capabilities in them through training. We help them execute projects and actually even resource mobilization. And on this particular account, when we're talking about menstrual hygiene management, on the 28th, we are hoping to support up to 100 girls or 200, depending on the numbers that we're getting so far. So with 100 girls, we're hoping to give them, currently from our standing, 100 girls, 3 months supply of sanitary towels, which is coming to around 330,000 Kenya shillings. We help them get the resourcing. And once we resource these youth groups, they will be able to support their communities. They're solving a local problem and we're giving them a lifeline. And on that account, I'll be challenging you, please contribute and help us make this a reality. And you can send your contribution either in monetary terms to M-Pesa till number 5616031. And if you're not possible, you can buy the sanitary towels and contact us on info.ryculture@gmail.com. If you're able to, that would be really appreciated. We have to mobilize and ensure that we're supporting such programs. And the other bit, in terms of all these interventions that we're talking about doing them, they need to be mainstream and they need a sustainability framework which is guided on law and put on paper. That is where we need to contribute to the policy development frameworks. When the different counties are having engagements with the ministries of health, we have to be there and address some of these challenges. Let's share our insights, our perspectives, and have our voice heard in terms of addressing social challenges that are in our community that are making our ladies have tough times. Let's make menstruation a normal fact of life by 2030 by playing the role that we need to play and playing it the best way we can, because I know we can. And we only have to make a commitment to do it and take action, because with that, we'll be able to deliver. Thank you so much. I look forward to engaging with you in this next Sunday as we have another session, and we see how to improve our service delivery as pharmacists and improve access to healthcare services. Thank you and have a fantastic one ahead. Good night.